The main character of the story is Mukota, a 27-year-old office worker. He, along with 3 students, was summoned to a new world, where a ritual is taking place to summon heroes to save this kingdom. During their skill assessment, they discovered that one person can use a holy sword, while the 2 girls possess magic. Mukota, on the other hand, only has one skill, which he finds ridiculously useless. That is online grocery. Mukota feels disappointed because he thought that coming to a different world would grant him an immense power. The other 3 with their powerful skills are warmly welcomed, while Mukota and his weak skill are ignored. Later, all 4 of them meet the king, who explains that he summoned them because the kingdom is being harassed by the demon. Upon hearing this, Mukota immediately stands up and requests to decline protecting the kingdom, considering his skill to be weak and desiring a peaceful life. As a result, Mukota was fired and sent away, and only receives a compensation of 20 gold coins. While walking on the street, Mukota notices people around him looking at him suspiciously. It turns out that he is still wearing his office attire, so he decides to change into a new outfit to avoid drawing attention. He enters a nearby clothing shop and comes out dressed as a farmer. He then rents a cheap room for the night. While resting in his room, Mukota opens his status board to check it, which displays his skills such as appraisal, an item chest, and the most powerful skill he possesses, called online grocery. Seeing this, he opens the online grocery to see how it works. As he touches the screen, a board appears with an interface similar to online shopping on Amazon. Feeling hungry, Mukota decides to buy a bottle of water and a loaf of bread. After paying, within an instant, a box appears right next to Mukota. He opens it and finds exactly what he ordered. It is at this moment that Mukota realizes how miraculous this skill is and that it is not useless as he initially thought. With enough money, he can buy anything he wants from the online supermarket. Thus, the next day, he decides to leave the country and head to another one. To get there, he takes the first horse carriage ride of the day and meets an old soap merchant on the carriage. When he inquires about appraisal and item storage skills, the merchant discloses him that these skills are incredibly powerful and not everyone possesses them. Particularly, the appraisal skill is a privilege of those who come from different worlds, and only a few major countries are allowed to possess them. Hearing this, Mukota starts to feel a bit frightened and has to change the topic to avoid arousing suspicion about his true identity. Upon arrival, Mukota found that vehicles could no longer cross the border. He then entered a nearby restaurant and sought advice from some adventurous men. Learning that this country was at war, and many people were eager to leave, they advised Mukota to leave before the border closed. Fearing encounters with monsters along the way, Mukota sought out a guild of adventurers to hire a team to escort him to another country. After paying 8 gold coins, he was introduced to a group of 5 people, with Werner as their leader. Impressed by Werner's enthusiasm, Mukota took on the role of cooking during the journey. The next morning, they met at the rendezvous point, introduced themselves, and set off together. They stopped for lunch, and while Mukota prepared the meal using camping equipment and ingredients from online grocery, Rita finds these things intriguing and couldn't help but be curious. But since Mukota couldn't say that they were created by his awesome skills, he had to casually brush off the matter with a vague answer. Despite only having sandwiches and soup from the supermarket, everyone praised the food. It was then they realized Mukota's true value as an escort. After a satisfying meal, they continued their journey and encountered a wild boar. The swift adventurers quickly defeated it, and together they harvested the spoils. Mukota requested to keep all the meat, as it was abundant, and stored it in his item bag. Thus, the first day of the escort ended smoothly, and Mukota continued with his cooking duties. Rumor had it that he would prepare a new dish, arousing curiosity among the group. To keep his online grocery a secret, Mukota asked them to wait outside while he cooked. He prepared meat, cabbage, carrots, and potatoes, and added a few sausages. Once the meal was complete, Mukota also baked some bread as an accompaniment. After setting the table, he invited everyone to enjoy the feast. The result was astounding. Everyone couldn't help but indulge in the stunning meal. Thanks to Mukota, they felt healthier and more energetic than ever before. Mukota realized that the items purchased from the online grocery enhanced their strength. Another day passed, and night fell again. Mukota continued his cooking tasks, slicing the meat, marinating it, and preparing the cabbage. He added oil to the pan and fried the marinated meat. Once the meat was well cooked and covered with sauce, the grilled pork dish was served. Everyone praised the mouth-watering wild boar meat they had never tasted before. Suddenly, a giant wolf approached Mukota from behind, causing everyone to look with fearful eyes. It turned out to be Felnir, a mythical beast, and he demanded that Mukoda offer him the meal. Mukoda obediently prepared more food, and Felnir swiftly devoured it all, requesting more. After consuming dozens of plates, Felnir finally stopped and praised the delicious food. Meanwhile, Mukoda had become weak and unable to stand. Felnir expressed his desire to form a contract with Mukoda because his cooking had conquered his heart. Mukoda initially was scared and wanted to refuse, but under Felnir's menacing gaze, he had no choice but to accept. They formed a contract, and from now on, Mukoda would be obligated to serve Felnir with utmost dedication. Because they had made a pact, Felnir wanted Mukoda to give him a name, so Mukoda came up with all sorts of dog names that made Felnir angry. Finally, he named him Fel, and only then did Felnir accept it. Traveling with a mythical beast like Fel terrified people around them, and the adventurers believed that they would surely be stopped in the neighboring country because there was a legendary story that Fel had once destroyed an entire nation. Seeing Mukoda's worry, Fel reassured him that he would eliminate anyone who dared to attack him. That afternoon, Mukoda continued his cooking duties, and because Fel ate a lot every day, Mukoda mentioned that the meat in the chest was running out. Upon hearing this, Fel immediately went hunting for prey for Mukoda. The adventurers greatly admired Mukoda for being the first person to command the mythical beast. After a while, Fel brought back a giant bird, and Wenner said that this bird was a demon beast, so its beak and claws were very valuable. They then divided the tasks, assigning the task of butchering the bird to the adventurer group, while Mukoda prepared a dish from its meat. He used the leftover sauce bottle from yesterday to cook it, similar to pork meat. After grilling the meat on both sides, he boiled the sauce and poured it evenly over the meat, and thus, the bird meat with onion soup was completed right after. The whole group that enjoyed delicious, and Fel ate up all the remaining bird meat without leaving a trace. After the meal, they continued their journey to the neighboring country. When they reached the border, Mukoda saw many soldiers gathered in front of the city gate, and as they approached, they were stopped by the military. The guard believed that Fel was a dangerous demon beast that would harm their nation. Upon hearing this, Fel proposed a condition that as long as they didn't do anything to him, he wouldn't harm anyone. When the guard realized that Fel could speak like a human, they began to trust him, and eventually they agreed to let everyone in. After a few procedures, they officially arrived in the neighboring country. Upon hearing Mukoda's intention to earn a lot of money to travel and see the world, the adventurers advised him to join the Merchants Guild and register as an adventurer to be able to sell the valuable items that Fel had hunted. Upon hearing this, Mukoda thanked them, and they all continued into the city. To get in here, he also has to pay a tax that would empty his pockets. After a while, he encounters the envoy of the Count, who knows that he possesses a mythical beast and wants to get acquainted with him. However, he doesn't like playing with the people in power, so he refuses outright. Seeing that, the envoy pleads with him to go along. But at that moment Fel appears, making the envoy turn pale with fear. Fel knows that they want to exploit his power for their own gain, so he threatens the envoy to run for his life. Fel's actions make Mukoda and the adventurers slightly worried because the nobles value their prestige. The mission of the adventurers group here is over, so they thank Mukoda and return home. Afterward, Mukoda sets off with Fel to the Merchant Guild. Upon arriving, Mukoda tells the receptionist that he wants to become a merchant. Hearing this, she briefly introduces him to information about the Adventurers Guild. Next, she gives Mukoda a guild card so that he can engage in trading. When everything is settled, both of them find an inn to rest. Unfortunately, tonight Fel has to sleep outside the stable as they don't allow mythical beasts inside at the moment. It's time for dinner, so Mukoda quickly prepares the meal. After preparing the meat, Mukoda craves for rice, so he buys another stove. Since Fel is very hungry, he urges Mukoda to hurry. Mukoda turns on the stove and starts frying the meat with oil. Then he takes the meat out and adds sauce. Unable to resist the divine meat dish, Fel takes a bite and Mukoda continues to pour sauce over the rice, making a mixed rice dish that Fel can't stop eating. It's Mukoda's turn after putting the meat in the rice bowl. He also adds soy sauce to it, completing the pork rice bowl. He then picks up the bowl and eats heartily. Seeing this, Fel feels hungry again, so Mukoda has to oblige him. That night, before going to sleep, Mukoda goes to the online grocery to buy something. The next day, He brings them to the merchant guild, and when the receptionist takes a look, she is very surprised and immediately takes him to the guild master. The guild master is amazed because he has never seen such high quality salt and pepper before, so he expresses his desire to buy all of it to offer to the king, making Mukoda ecstatic. It only cost 5 coins to buy them, but now the guild master offers to pay tens of gold coins. Thinking that Mukoda is hesitating because of the low price, he raises the offer to 15 gold coins. Seeing Mukoda still hesitating, he further increases the price to 17 gold coins. The negotiation is then completed. At this point, Mukoda still can't believe he can earn so much money. With the money issue resolved, he goes to the Adventurers Guild. Since Fel isn't with him, the people there show contempt towards him. After filling out the membership information, the receptionist gives him a G rank membership card. She only explains that G rank is the lowest and only allows him to undertake low-level missions. Mukoda then goes to the mission board, and after observing for a while, he chooses the task of gathering herbs. But before setting off, he has to cook for Fel. He tells Fel that tomorrow there will be an even better dish, making Fel eagerly anticipate Mukoda's new creation. Mukoda tries to appraise his skills and sees that all the stats are impressively high, but he's a bit surprised and considers him just a greedy guy. The next morning was a beautiful day, and Mukoda thought it would be a perfect day to go herb picking. After they arrived at their mission location, Mukoda told Fel to go find something to hunt while he would gather herbs nearby. Not wanting to leave Mukoda alone, Fel used his strength to create a magical protective barrier for Mukoda. After reminding him to prepare a meal, Fel disappeared. Mukoda quickly examined the herbs that needed to be collected, using his appraisal skills to spot them all around. In no time, he had gathered all the necessary herbs. Feeling bored sitting around, Mukoda decided to prepare lunch. Seeing that their supply of monster meat was running low, he used online grocery to purchase some ingredients. Once the ingredients were ready, Mukoda chopped onions and fried them until soft, then added the ground meat to the pot and poured in the sauce. At that moment, Fel returned with a monster bird similar to the previous one, and there were a few more outside the forest, which he couldn't bring back yet. Since Mokuda didn't need monster meat for lunch, Mukoda continued making spaghetti. Once the noodles were cooked, he added a bit of sauce and used the online grocery to buy a jar of grated cheese to sprinkle on top. And thus, the Italian spaghetti with meat sauce was complete. Mukoda explained that this dish was made in his own world, and whenever Fel ate it, he always praised its deliciousness and couldn't stop eating. Meanwhile, Mukoda ate while contemplating the upcoming plans. When he looked up, he noticed Fel had finished eating, with sauce stains around his mouth, which made Mukoda burst into laughter. After satisfying their hunger, they headed to the location where Fel had hunted the monster. It was full of ferocious beasts, including the fearsome ORCs, which made Mukoda a bit scared due to their intelligence. However, Fel assured him that the locals here ate them regularly, so Mukoda reluctantly took some. Once they were done, Fel reminded Mukoda to climb onto his back so they could return to the town faster. Fel sped off at an incredible speed, making Mukoda feel half dead during the ride. Within a short while, they arrived in town, and Mukoda felt like he had reached his final moments. He warned Fel not to do that again. Afterward, they went to the Adventurers Guild to submit the collected herbs. Despite having gathered a lot, the receptionist only paid them a few coins. When Mukoda mentioned that he had a mythical beast as a pet, the receptionist's eyes widened. She then introduced them to a meat trader. They went to the trader to appraise the pile of monster meat that Fel had hunted. Seeing that it was all top quality, the trader offered a high price for the meat. Mukoda then asked him to butcher the entire pile and keep whatever was left to sell. The trader agreed and scheduled Mukoda to pick up the meat the next morning. However, since Fel was craving ORC meat, Mukoda asked the trader to prepare it as well. After a while, Mokuda prepares all the necessary ingredients, thinly slice the meat, and sprinkle salt and pepper on it. Next, crack the eggs into a bowl and beat them well, sprinkle flour on the meat, then dip it into the eggs, and then put it in the pan and flip it over to avoid burning. When it's cooked, he take them out and pour the meat sauce on top, and the pork pizza with meat sauce is complete. Fel enjoys it and praises the dish for being light and tender, which made him eat a lot. Mukoda was initially hesitant because it was ORC meat, which seemed a bit gross to him, but when he saw Fel enjoying the dish heartily, he decided to try a piece and found it very tender and tasty, not as repulsive as he imagined. The next morning, Mukoda goes to the merchant's place and finds that the pile of monster meat has been prepared. After selling the ingredients, he receives over 200 gold coins as a reward. He is surprised because there is so much money, so the old man explains the value of these goods to him. By the way, the old man also admires Mukoda for taming a magical beast like Fel, because no one outside would believe that someone would make a contract with him. Seeing rumors spreading about him, Mukoda thinks it's time to leave and tells Fel about that. But Fel is only focused on food now. As evening approaches, both of them stop to rest and Mukoda thanks Fel for helping him find the valuable items, promising a delicious meal for the night. Seeing Fel hungry, Mukoda provides him with some porridge from online grocery while he prepares a Japanese-style black beef steak. Fel shows a skeptical expression when he sees the small piece of meat, but after trying it, he praises it as delicious. Mukoda explains that the meat is tasty because the cows are well taken care of. After a satisfying meal, both of them are full. Fel says that Mukoda's food makes him feel his body overflowing with power. Mukoda uses his appraisal skill and sees that all of Fel's stats have increased by 50%. Fel, feeling restless, wants to go hunting immediately. He then creates a powerful protective barrier for Mukoda and leaves. At this point, Mukoda thinks Fel will probably return in the morning, so he decides to go to sleep. Meanwhile, after gaining strength from Mukoda, Fel starts sweeping through the forest. The next morning, when Mukoda wakes up, he dares not witness Fel's achievements. Fel explains that he accidentally went a bit too far due to the excessive power from the beef. Seeing that, Mukoda then thinks it's better not to let Fel eat beef anymore. On that noon, Mukoda only served Fel a simple pork dish. Fel found it not very tasty, but when Mukoda added a little lime butter sauce, he finished the plate of meat. After finishing the meal, Mukoda asked Fel about the magic skill he used to hunt animals. After hearing Fel's sharing, Mukoda attempted to conjure a fireball, but nothing happened. Fel asked him what he was trying to do, making Mukoda feel embarrassed. It was then that Fel explained that he had to channel magical energy to be able to use magic and instructed Mukoda to touch himself to feel that energy. Once Mukoda grasped some understanding, Fel said it was time to start training. Mukoda created a fireball, but it disappeared before reaching its target, leaving him discouraged. Fel criticized him for being weak and suggested that he train with beasts to be more effective. However, Mukoda refused because he was afraid that he would become the beast's meal. Fel couldn't accept having such a weak companion, so he insisted on training Mukoda right away. When they came across a goblin village, Fel told Mukoda to go there and test his abilities, but Mukoda was too afraid because the goblins were too numerous. Fel then yelled to get their attention, using this method to force Mukoda to fight them. Fel then left Mukoda running for his life to hunt high-level goblins. With no other option, Mukoda had to use fire to intimidate the goblins before continuing to run and maintain distance. Unexpectedly, he stumbled and thought his life would end there. But Fel's barrier protected him. Mukoda immediately retaliated with a fireball against the goblins. Seeing that it didn't have much effect, he unleashed a powerful fireball, but it only managed to destroy a few of them. This time, Mukoda was exhausted and about to faint, but luckily Fel returned just in time. When he woke up, he saw Fel sitting next to him, and Mukoda blamed him for leaving him alone. Fel then praised his impressive fireball technique. To celebrate this success, Fel brought out a goblin king that he had hunted. He mentioned that they contained magic stones and advised Mukoda to sell them for money and use that money to prepare a lavish meal for him. Mukoda has already exhausted at this moment, so that night he only gave Fel some supermarket cakes to eat. Mukoda then hastily ate the cake because he was very hungry by then. When he turned to Fel, he saw that Fel was also devouring the cake and praising it repeatedly. Without much delay, Fel finished the whole cake and demanded another plate from Mukoda. Mukoda immediately advised Fel that eating sweets like this would cause tooth decay and diabetes. But Fel claimed to be protected by the wind god Ninlil, so diseases and toxins had no effect on him. He proudly declared that only geniuses like him were worthy of divine protection. Feeling unfair, Mukoda bought Fel out and begged someone to protect him. By chance, Mokara's plea was heard by the god Ninlil. The next morning, they entered a town, terrifying the people there. The soldiers immediately detained them, and Mukoda had to present the adventurous card for them to see. They were eventually allowed to enter. They walked into the town, as Mukoda wanted to find a map, so he left Fel in a warehouse. but Fel didn't want to be alone and kept asking Mukoda when he would return. Mukoda said he would be back in the evening, and left a plate of cake for Fel before leaving. Mukoda went to a bookstore but couldn't buy a map. Then he went to the city library, but it was closed. When he arrived home, Fel continuously frowned as he thought Mukoda was back too late. To appease Fel, Mukoda prepared dinner for him. He used online grocery to order 2 dishes made from bird meat and deep-fried wild boar meat. Fel then tasted both dishes and commented on the flavors. Seeing Fel enjoying the meal, Mukoda was satisfied and prepared dinner for himself afterward. The meal was well prepared with rice, sauce, and filet meat. Seeing Mukoda enjoying the delicious food, Fel couldn't help but crave more, so he asked for more food. The next morning, Mukoda went to a tavern to inquire about directions. Since he had nothing to do, he paid for a table at the tavern. Seeing that Mukoda was generous, the others invited him to sit down and get to know each other. When they learned that Mukoda was looking for a map, they mentioned Mokuda, a valuable map given by a previous adventurer, and offered to sell it to him for a small price of 1 gold coin, as a token of appreciation for his hospitality. Mukoda immediately paid 1 gold coin to buy the map. After the group left, the people in the tavern couldn't help but laugh. Mukoda immediately asked them and found out that the map was being sold abundantly at the Adventurers Guild for only 1 silver coin. It was at this moment that Mukoda realized he had been deceived, but it was already too late. Mukoda returned to Fel and showed him the map to navigate. When Fel saw the sea ahead, he immediately thought of seafood. Couldn't resist his pet's craving. Mukoda laughed along, and they set off together. Goddess Ninlil, when observing Fel's close relationship with Mukoda, wondered who he was to become the owner of the spirit beast in her clan. Meanwhile, Mukoda was riding Fel and swiftly heading towards the coast. But due to extreme hunger, he temporarily stopped at a lake to catch fish. Fel approached the lake and used his magic to activate an electric shock. Afterward, Fel told Mokuda to choose any fish he liked. Mukoda thought the fish had died from the shock, but Fel explained that they were only temporarily stunned. Mukoda then approached and caught several fish, which he assessed to be identical to salmon. On the other hand, Fel desired a fish of a different color, but when Mukoda assessed it, he discovered it was poisonous. Therefore, he discarded it, causing Fel to feel regretful. Once the fish preparation was completed, Mukoda gathered firewood and went online to buy flour, butter, and mushrooms. He then began his cooking process by first removing all the organs and washing them with water. Next, he skewered the fish and placed them over the fire. Mukoda proceeded by cutting off the head and splitting the fish in half. After cutting, he wrapped them in silver foil along with salt, various mushrooms, butter, and wine, and then placed them back on the fire. While waiting for the other fish to cook, Mukoda prepared a grilled fish dish. After sprinkling salt and pepper on the fish, he applied a thin layer of flour, then put it in a pan and grilled it for a few minutes. Thus, Mukoda presented a variety of fish dishes. Due to his intense craving, Fel even ate the silver foil, prompting Mukoda to remind him to unwrap it. They both enjoyed the delicious meal. Mukoda also prepared a can of beer to accompany the food. Turning to Fel, Mukoda noticed that he had finished eating and demanded more food. As a result, Mukoda had to interrupt his meal to serve his boss. While Mukoda was about to pee, he accidentally encounters a slime. When he touched it, he found it to be soft and cute, which melted his heart. He used his assessment skill and found that its stats were ridiculously low. Seeing that it seemed hungry, he planned to cook something for it. But the slime unexpectedly headed towards a bottle and digested it, then attempted to digest the pan as well. But Mukoda managed to stop it. Instead, the slime went to the dishes and ate one of Mukoda's plates. Later on, it cleaned up all the trash around, making Mukoda very pleased. He hugged the slime, and Fel mentioned that their recent actions had unintentionally formed a contract. Hearing that, Mukoda used his assessment skill, and noticed that the slime's stats had increased, so he named it Sui. And from that moment on, Sui officially became a member of the group. The next morning, Mukoda practiced his stone magic, but his skills were still lacking. Fel suggested that he engage in real combat once again to see how he improved. But recalling the terrifying memories of goblins, Mukoda declined. Fel believed that if he remained fearful, he would never become stronger. Feeling Fel's slight unpleasantness, Mukoda turned to play with Sui instead. It was then that he noticed Sui had grown a little bigger, and its stats had also increased. Since Fel was hungry, he asked Mukoda to prepare his lunch. So Mukoda served him an ORC meat rice dish. Fel then finished eating before Mokuta had a chance to explain about the cooking ingredients. Sui also had his own bowl. While enjoying the miso sauce, Fel demanded another serving. Sui also had just finished eating, so Mokuta had to continue serving his bosses. After the meal, Sui took over cleaning and washing the dishes. Seeing that, Mokuta was very pleased with that, unlike Fel, who just lay in one place after eating. Once Sui finished, Mokuta served dorayaki as a dessert with green tea. As usual, Fel had the biggest appetite and asked for more cake. It was Sui's first time eating something sweet, so he seemed to enjoy the cake. The next morning, when the sun had risen, Fel woke you up to discuss something important. He said that he had received a message from the goddess Ninlil, accepting Mokuta's request for protection. Mokuta was overjoyed by this news, but Fel mentioned that there was a condition. Every week, Mokuta would have to offer sweet treats to Ninlil. Hearing this, Mokuta was speechless, as he never imagined that a goddess would enjoy eating sweets. He asked Fel about the offering ritual, and he began to explain. After preparing various cakes, Mokuta began his prayer. Indeed, his body felt stronger. He then silently thanked Ninlil for the protection. She was extremely happy holding a red bean cake that she had always dreamed of. When she took a bite, she found it soft and sweet, and the bitterness of the coffee milk complemented the sweetness perfectly. She intended to save some for later, but the delicious taste was irresistible, and in no time, the plate was empty. With the protection of the Ninlil, Mokuta now could easily perform magic, and even his damage output increased. However, due to the limitations of the human body, he quickly became exhausted. To replenish his energy, he had a bit more sweet treats with black coffee, and then rested with Sui, waiting for Fel to return. When Fel returned, he immediately questioned Mokuta about what he had eaten while Fel was away. Mokuta showed him the chocolate bar and explained that he needed the energy because he was tired. Fel couldn't accept Mokuta's eating alone, so he demanded Mokuta use the online grocery to buy it for him as well. While Fel was happily eating, the goddess Ninlil contacted Mokuta directly through telepathy and requested him to offer chocolate to her immediately. Mokuta wondered which deity had such preferences, as he had just completed an offering 3 days ago. However, she responded with an annoyed expression, "Even goddesses have their own preferences, you idiot." So, once again, Mokuta had to use online grocery to fulfill her requests. Ninlil then thanked him and expressed her joy. Fel admired Mokuta greatly for appeasing the goddess Ninlil, as he also desired other dishes. He urged Mokuta to get going. After being launched for a while, in front of them was a dark dungeon. Seeing Mukuta's frightened expression, Fel reassured him that he brought him here for real combat. Since Mukuta had previously fought with fire magic, this time he would practice rock magic. When Mukuta tried to escape, Fel dragged him back. Mukuta begged Fel to forgive him this time, but Fel refused. To ease Mukuta's fear, Fel would create a protective barrier for him, and Sui also encouraged him to reluctantly agree. But before that, Mukuta had to eat something to gain more strength. Seeing Mukuta preparing a lavish meal, Fel thought he was having his last meal before dying. Mukuta claimed that these foods would increase his stats. He devoured various dishes before conquering the dungeon, leaving some cake for Sui. After filling his stomach, Mukuta checked his stats and noticed a 20% increase. Fel then promptly urged him to enter the dungeon and fight. Mukuta confidently wielded his sword, but hesitated when he entered the dungeon. Mukuta's first opponent was a slime, and Sui supported him with an acid attack. With newfound confidence, Mukuta used magic to defeat the slime. The next opponents were a group of rabbits, followed by goblins. They then encountered a pack of hunting wolves, which frightened Mukuta, causing him to flee. But thanks to Fel's encouragement, he returned and used rock magic to defeat the wolves on the spot. Mukuta thought Fel would spare him at this point, but Fel continued to descend to the next level, mentioning that there would be 10 more wolves ahead. However, upon arrival, Mukuta realized their numbers had multiplied to form an army. Mukuta intended to escape, but Fel dragged him back, stating that he would create a barrier for Mukuta to combine forces with Sui and defeat the entire pack. Seeing Sui eager to fight, Fel pushed both of them into the heart of the dungeon. As soon as the wolves spotted Mukuta, they rushed towards him, but Fel's barrier repelled them. Sui quickly launched acid attacks, helping Mukuta gain more confidence as they eliminated the wolves. After finishing off the pack, Mukuta could finally breathe a sigh of relief. However, the real battle wasn't over yet. As the final boss appeared, a wolf leader wielding an axe, which terrified Mukuta. Fel revealed it was the Wolf King, and it was extremely enraged at this moment. Mukuta panicked and tried to run, realizing his rock magic was no longer effective against it. After a fierce battle, Mukoda lost consciousness. When he woke up, he found Sui by his side, expressing gratitude, which surprised him as it was the first time he heard Sui speak. Hearing Sui's adorable voice made Mukoda's heart melt. Upon assessing Sui's status, Mukoda noticed that Sui had also leveled up and improved his stats. However, when he checked his own condition, Mukoda couldn't help but feel disappointed as he was still weaker than a slime. He asked Sui about Fell's whereabouts, and Sui mentioned that Fell was out doing something, but soon enough, Fell returned with a stained mouth. He explained that Mukoda hadn't woken up for a while, so he had to find something to sustain him. Despite still being a bit resentful about the earlier barrier incident, it was almost lunchtime, so Mukoda went to the supermarket to buy ingredients to serve his two bosses. After some shopping, he gathered all the necessary ingredients. First, he chopped onions and sliced the chicken into small pieces, then added soy sauce and spices to a frying pan. Once the meat was cooked, he cracked eggs into the pan and poured the entire mixture into a rice cooker, and thus, the Japanese rice dish was completed. Although Fell had just consumed the monsters, Fell and Sui ate heartily, and Sui praised the incredible taste of the meal, which delighted Mukoda. The three of them finished their lunch, and while they were chatting, Sui accidentally called Fell uncle, which made Mukoda burst into laughter. Indeed, compared to the 14-day-old slime, Fell was undeniably an elderly uncle. Fell pretended to be upset and turned to scold Sui, causing Mukoda to comfort the little creature in his arms to calm its fears. Seeing this, Mukoda turned to Fell and called him a petty old man, seeking revenge for his previous encounters. Fortunately, Sui later accepted calling Fell by a normal name, which eased Fell's anger.